Hey, this is Richard with a review of Dromoland Castle, a hotel and resort in the west of Ireland, near the city of Limerick. Dromoland Castle is the ancestral home of the O'Brien clan. It's existed in one form or another for more than 1,000 years. The present main building dates back to the early 1800s. It was converted to a hotel in 1963 and today is owned by a group of Irish-American investors. We wanted to stay in a castle as part of our first trip to Ireland, and after some research, I zeroed in on 3 places in the western part of the country. Adair Manor, which is widely regarded as Ireland's top hotel, Ballynahinch Castle, and Dromoland. At well over $1,000 a night for their most basic room, Adair's prices gave me pause. Ballynahinch was considerably less expensive, with room rates starting around €340. Price-wise, Dromoland was right between those two, and based on the pictures and reviews that I saw, I ended up choosing it. Dromoland has a number of room options, and no two are exactly alike. We booked a Viscount Deluxe room. The price of €932 per night, including breakfast, was steep. However, if you stay 3 nights, the 3rd night is free, so that dropped the daily rate all the way down to €621, a big savings. Dromoland is located in the countryside northwest of the city of Limerick. The most convenient, cost-effective ways to get there are to rent a car or combine a train and taxi trip, which is what we did. We were coming from Dublin, so we took the train from Heuston Station to Colbert Station in downtown Limerick. Our train left Dublin at 11:35 and arrived in Limerick at 1:38, so almost 2 hours travel time on the nose. From there, you can walk out to the front of the small station and grab a taxi. The ride takes about 25 minutes and will cost you between €50 and €70. Overall, I found the train-taxi combination to be very easy. The landscape along the train ride was pleasant, and our taxi driver was friendly and informative, and really knew a lot about the history of Dromoland. Bear in mind that on most of the Dublin-Limerick routes, you have to change trains at Limerick Junction, about 30 minutes outside of the city. It's an outdoor platform. You get off one train and then wait for the train into Limerick Colbert. It doesn't take long, but it's an inconvenience to have to lug your suitcases onto another train. My advice when booking is to look for direct trains from Dublin-Heuston to Limerick Colbert, so you won't have to change trains at Limerick Junction. The castle is located on the road between Limerick and the town of Ennis. It's a large property, 500 acres of green grass and forest with a lake in the middle. The long driveway takes you past the lake and the golf course to the castle and reception area. We arrived a little before our 3 p.m. check-in time, and our room was not ready yet, so they had us wait in the gallery, an area just down the hall from check-in with lots of chairs and couches. A server brought us complimentary coffee while we waited. We had been there about 15 minutes when I heard a bagpiper outside and went to investigate. For a moment, I thought he was serenading golfers on the back 9, but it turned out he was warming up to greet a group that was arriving by helicopter. After that bit of excitement, our room was ready, and the valet took our bags over and we settled in. Our room was in the Queen Anne courtyard, adjacent to the castle. The 2-story building set around the courtyard actually predates the castle, having been built in the early 1700s. It's connected to the castle through a couple of hallways and a set of stairs. The courtyard itself is decorated with plants and has a map of the garden layout if you're interested in finding out the identity of any particular plant. The Viscount Deluxe room that we booked exceeded my expectations. I thought it was going to be a nice big double room, but it was essentially a large suite. In fact, it was bigger than some of the actual suites that I've stayed in. The layout was an elongated rectangle, divided into a living area, bedroom, and bath. There were several little treats and surprises waiting for us when we arrived, including a box of biscuits, a sleeve of chocolates, and a couple sample bottles of fragrances from the nearby Burren Perfumery. Each night there was a turn-down service with chocolates. For our last night, they put out a sleep kit with earplugs. I would have preferred more chocolates. The mini fridge was stocked with drinks. It's a convenient place to store leftover food from any of your meals at the castle. The living area had a flat-screen television on the wall that showed Irish and UK channels. Unfortunately, there were no American sports or news channels through which to follow things back home. I did enjoy watching some of the curling matches, especially after one of our drivers gave me a brief primer on the sport. The bed was very comfortable, with a good firm mattress topped by a big heavy comforter. The mattress was so comfortable we looked it up after our stay was over, with the thought of buying one someday. The bedroom also has a large closet and a safe. The temperature in the room was controlled by a digital thermostat. I thought it was pretty responsive. The temps were comfortable throughout our stay. The fan was pretty quiet on the low setting, but when we turned it up to the max level, it made some grinding noises. So we kept it on low and relied on our portable desk fan for white noise. The bathroom was decent sized. It was stocked with plenty of towels and a couple of robes. There was one sink with limited counter space around it. The shower had a nice rainfall nozzle sitting directly overhead. There was a niche in the wall for toiletries. The separate tub was deep, but it took forever to fill, so we had to turn on the water well in advance of taking a bath. Also, the toilet lid, when raised, partially blocked the flusher. Overall, I found the room to be very quiet. I've reviewed other hotels on my channel, and one of my pet peeves is the sound of people stomping around in the room above. There was no such problem here because this was a top-floor room. Under the carpet are warped wooden floors that creak when you walk on them. When someone walked by in the hall outside, we could hear the floor creaking. Fortunately, foot traffic was minimal. There were a few oddities to the room. First, there's no door between the bedroom and living area, which is less than ideal if one person stays up later than the other. In addition, each of the many plugs in the room had its own on-off switch. So sometimes you'd try to turn on a light or plug something in and it wouldn't work, and then you'd remember to switch on the plug. A couple of the lamps needed new bulbs, and there was supposed to be a free sample of Bunratty mead in the decanter, but it was empty. Both of these issues were addressed quickly by staff. Lastly, the layout of the hotel is a little confusing. Signs are placed on the wall to help, but still, we frequently took wrong turns and ended up at dead ends. It was a bit of a running joke. Occasionally we'd see other hotel guests who were also lost, and we'd share a laugh. But after a couple of days, we got the hang of the layout and easily and quickly made the short walk between our room and the lobby and dining area. Food options on the property are plentiful. There's a breakfast buffet, the casual Fig Tree restaurant, the fancy Earl of Thomond restaurant, along with room service and afternoon tea. Breakfast takes place in the dining room by the gallery that looks out on the lake and golf course. Breakfast runs from 7:30 to 10 every morning. You check in at the entrance, and a host will seat you and drop off menus for the a la carte options. Ask for a table by the window. After you're seated, servers will bring over coffee and juice. The buffet is set up in the hallway outside the dining room. Selections include cereals, meats, baked goods, yogurts, fruit, and healthy juices. You can get a good breakfast there, but I'd recommend ordering from the a la carte menu as well. One morning I got the traditional Irish breakfast with fried eggs. It was good except for the blood pudding, which I found to be dry and a little grainy. Another day I got fried eggs with French toast, and the last morning there I tried the pancakes, which are thicker and not as fluffy as American versions, but still tasty. For my wife, who has celiac disease, there was a table with gluten-free cereals and baked goods, and numerous gluten-free options on the a la carte menu. She had a cheese omelet one morning, eggs Benedict with avocado on gluten-free toast on another. The breakfast room did a steady business, but we never had to wait for a table. The food came out quickly and the service was friendly and efficient. As always with these buffets, the earlier you go, the fewer people you'll see. Lunch and dinner options include the more casual Fig Tree restaurant, located at the golf clubhouse, a short walk west of the castle. On the surface, it looks like a typical 19th hole dining room with a small bar in the back, but the menu is a bit more ambitious. The 5 starters run from 6 to 19 euros, and the 6 entrees cost between 25 and 40 euros. There are daily specials too. We had a sit-down dinner there on our first night. I got the soup of the day plus a burger, fries, and a beer. It was all good. I also recommend the chopped salad, which we got to go on our last night. The servers were friendly and the takeout order was ready quickly. Keep the Fig Tree in mind if you want a good, no-fuss lunch or dinner. At night, the dining room where you eat breakfast becomes the Earl of Thomond, the castle's high-end dining experience. We ate there the second night. They do a good job of making the dining room over into a classy dinner time spot. For instance, a cellist played in the dining room throughout dinner. Again, ask for a table by the window if possible. There is a tasting menu for 160 euros and an a la carte menu that shares many of the items from the tasting menu. The meal began with an excellent basket of bread, which my wife had to watch me enjoy while she chewed on the lame, gluten-free bread. We split an appetizer of roasted scallops with cauliflower and almond puree and a sauce with peas that was dynamite. For my entree, I had sole over asparagus tips in a buttery lemon caper sauce. It was quite good. My wife had this roasted chicken dish that was kind of like a chicken roll. It was decent, but I would stick with the seafood here. The pear dessert with caramelized pear and praline ice cream was really exceptional. Lovely presentation and very tasty. They also brought out a little something for my wife, who was celebrating her birthday. Overall, a nice meal in a lovely space with good, brisk service. The bar at the castle occupies a small, high-ceilinged room just down the hall from the dining room. Each night, they had different singers perform traditional Irish music in a room just outside the bar. My father used to listen to Irish music at home, so I was familiar with a lot of the songs. It's a fun way to wind down the evening. Activities abound at the castle, a good thing given its relative isolation. A highlight for us was what's called the Hawk Walk, in which one of Dromoland's falconers takes you out on a hike with a bird of prey. It takes a little over an hour and costs 90 euros per person for 2 people. It's a little cheaper per person for larger groups. At the appointed hour, we met the falconer and the falcon out front. We got leather gloves to protect our hands, and then we went off into the woods. Over the next hour or so, the falconer would let the falcon fly off into the trees. Then she would put little pieces of beef tongue on our gloves, and the falcon would swoop in, land on our hands, eat the meat, occasionally stomp its feet a little as if demanding more food. The falcons swoop in low because the air resistance is less, closer to the ground. Our guide gave us lots of good information about falcons and the history of falconry. We did a circular loop through the woods, and then she took us up to the sanctuary, where we got to meet and learn about peregrine falcons and barn owls and horned owls. It was a great experience. I highly recommend it. Later, as kind of a bonus, I watched the head falconer out in front of the castle training a falcon to hunt. He would swing this stuffed leather pouch in big loops. It had some chicken parts on it, and the falcon would fly up in the air and swoop down to attack. On the 3rd or 4th try, the bird hit the target and ate the chicken. Another cool thing to see up close. One afternoon before our big dinner, we got massages at the spa. It was 180 euros per person for just under an hour. We were the only ones there. A nice space and a relaxing experience. Another strong recommend from me. There is a gym located inside the golf clubhouse, but we didn't use it. Other activities that we saw people partaking in included archery, clay shooting, and of course golf. A round costs just under 200 euros during the high season from April through October. about half that the rest of the year. Pricey, but quite a bit cheaper than the €500 price tag for a round at Adair Manor. The castle's location in Western Ireland puts it within reach of some of the country's great natural wonders, like the Cliffs of Moher and the lunar landscape of the Burren. You can book driving tours to these sites through the castle, and that's what we did. It's a bespoke experience. You go where you want, when you want. There's no rigid schedule. It costs €550 for 6 to 8 hours. We went on a Tuesday. We met our driver James in front at about 10:30 in the morning. The car was a Mercedes sedan with leather seats, very comfortable. James was terrific, knowledgeable, and pretty mellow. We went up to the Cliffs of Moher, walked around there a bit, then we went north along the coast to the Burren. A highlight of the trip was the view of Dromoland Castle, where some sailors from the Spanish Armada washed up and were executed. It's now a private residence. After that, we stopped in Doolin, which was a bit of a letdown. For all the attention it gets, it's really small. Basically one row of colorful buildings along the road. It's home to a couple of good souvenir shops and an ice cream store. We didn't stay long there. We then drove north along the coast and stopped for lunch at a place called Monk's in the seaside town of Ballyvaughan. I would stick with the seafood there. The lamb in the Guinness stew was a little fatty. We then drove into the Burren on a winding road and visited Poolnabrone, a burial ground that dates back about 5,500 years. The highlight there is the remains of a dolmen, or portal tomb, made from huge slabs of limestone. On the way back, we stopped in Ennis, a town of about 28,000 people on the River Fergus, where we did some shopping and checked out the Friary, a ruined old church from the 13th century. We got back around dinner time. I enjoyed this tour and would recommend it if you're staying at the castle for 4 or more days. If your stay is shorter, then you might consider skipping it, if only because there's so much to see and do at the castle. Bear in mind, Limerick is close and worth a visit. It's Ireland's third most populous city and has lots to see and do. You could probably hit the highlights in a half a day. One of the best activities at the castle comes at no additional charge, and that is taking walks around the property. There are walking trails through the woods northeast of the castle, where you'll see some huge old trees, some of which are labeled. Another path goes around the lake. An absolute must-see is the walled garden, located behind the building that houses the gym and golf clubhouse. We walked it one evening after dinner at Fig Tree. It's got flower beds, hedges, a pool, and old brick walls. A very serene spot that dates back to Elizabethan times. Don't leave without checking it out. On our last night at the castle, I set out to find the Hermit's Cave, which I had read about in a blog. According to legend, a previous castle owner built the cave as a place where he could serve penance for his sins, but instead of staying there, he paid a guy to serve the penance for him. The legend goes that the man stayed there for years and was well compensated when it was all over. My determination to find the cave grew after a couple of staffers told me they didn't know where it was. So my wife and I set out toward the Temple of Mercury and found the ivy-shrouded cave just downhill from the temple. The cave is small. It has a stone ceiling. There's a little nook out front, almost like a stone mailbox, with a date of AD 1041 inscribed on it. It's a fun little diversion that would be a good activity for kids. Speaking of kids, I did not see a single child during our stay at Dromoland. We had just come from Dublin and the Intercontinental Hotel, which was full of kids, but there were none at the castle. I asked a woman at the front desk about this, and she said the castle is normally busy with children. In fact, the week before we arrived, there were a lot of kids there. But apparently the Irish kids were back in school after their Easter break. And with the American kids in school too, the hotel clientele definitely skewed older. Nothing against kids, but I found that their absence made for a more tranquil experience at the castle. Service at Dromoland was terrific. The staff was friendly, unpretentious, very Irish. The housekeepers always greeted us when we passed them in the hall. Any issues we had were quickly taken care of. One night there was a loud group of about 8 people in the courtyard. At 11:30, I called the front desk, and the woman apologized and said she would send someone over to speak to them. About 5 minutes later, the noise ceased. In summary, I was very pleased with my experience at Dromoland and would recommend it without reservation. The room was spacious, the bed comfortable, breakfast was terrific, and there are lots of activities. If I ever return, I'll ask for the same room, the Viscount Deluxe on the second floor of the Queen Anne courtyard. It's a great room for couples. I thought that the price with the free third night was fair. I'd like to stay longer next time. Maybe play a round of golf, take a bike ride, do the hawk walk again. If you're planning a trip to Dromoland, I'd recommend staying for at least 3 nights. A quick aside, before our visit I was calling the place Dromoland, and then I asked someone at the front desk and found out it's actually pronounced Dromoland with the emphasis on the second syllable. Regardless of what you call it, I wholeheartedly recommend Dromoland Castle. The staff, grounds, food, and activities combine for a great Irish vacation. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.